Hey guys, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? If so, well, you might want to consider Anchor. So when Jesse and I first started doing this, we had a lot of questions. We had no idea what we were doing. How do we record an episode? How do we even get it out there to people? And truth be told, Anchor, which is the app we use to record this, made all of this incredibly simple. We are both what you could call technologically challenged, and we can use this with simplicity. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, just go to anchor.fm/start. You can make a profile, and honestly, you can start recording probably within 5 minutes. Hit an upload button, and it automatically adds it to all these platforms that you listen to us on. So again, that's anchor.fm/start, and you can get started right away. Jesse's standing up already.
Serious podcasting happening.
It's recording. We got another. No, it's good. Keep it genuine at the start. I like that. We have another guest today. This is a same day recording, actually. Not that that means much.
We almost fell off the wagon there. Missed 1 week.
Yeah,
I don't know why. It was my fault. I did something.
It doesn't matter. It's happened a few times. We always rebound and then just do some binge recordings. It's finally nice out today. Not to do like the old stereotypical talk about the weather, but there's finally some sun out there.
Hey, you're boring. Talk about something.
Yeah.
How about them Jays?
Yeah, that too.
Kawhi. That's a big one.
Honestly,
that's like a shot of the.
I don't think I've ever seen a shot like that. Like that's like a movie, straight from a movie.
Yeah, it's made up. It's awesome. That's like I think the only other big Toronto sports thing like that would be the World Series in like '93 or something. Walk-off homer, Joe Carter.
Yeah. What about the Batista?
Well, that
Batista home run, bat flip.
Was that a series clincher or anything?
That was to win it against Texas. And actually, you remember that? Were you at the house that day when we were watching that?
No, but
you were at school, right?
I was writing a midterm, and I remember because that's annoying. It was dead quiet in the room because everyone's writing an exam, right? Yeah. But the prof's at the front of the room watching the game on his phone, and I just remember. So we're all silent, whatever. Everyone knows what's going on though, and then just out of nowhere, like 30, 60 exam, the prof is just like, whoa! And we're all like, what's going on? So he wrote the score on the board. So he was updating the score through the midterm, which was sweet. So we were all pumped.
Who was it, Bellamy?
I don't remember his name. But then I saw the highlight afterwards and I was like, okay, now I understand his reaction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a cool one too.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Probably just because the Jays are crap so often that when something good happens, it's a big event.
Yeah, that was like the only year I actually religiously watched baseball.
Yeah.
I watched it right through the regular season all the way through.
I can't stand Toronto fans. It's just the Leafs fans, and just it's tough to watch. But something like that is special, and like Leonard doing that.
Yeah,
Batista, it's good for the city, obviously, but the Leafs need something.
Yeah, sure do.
That's true. But Boston won again last night, which is annoying because I really dislike the Leafs, but I think I dislike Boston even more.
Yeah.
See, I like Boston because they have that, like, those 5 guys, that core group that's been with each other forever. And they play guys, they play other teams, and you just see the intimidation level with that team.
Yeah,
like, it's insane, man. They literally run guys out of the rink. So it's kind of cool.
Old man Chara walking around out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you guys have guessed with all our talk about hockey. That's why that our guest is hockey-based. So we have Brett Welychka on the podcast today. I actually played with Brett a little bit at Carleton University. I think that was your first year, my last year, wasn't it? And he's since moved on to the pro ranks, so we're going to get into a little bit about that today. Kind of a lot about like training, nutrition around pro hockey, how that compares to college hockey, even junior hockey. Probably talk a little bit about some concussion stuff because you had a few of those these past few seasons. So there's some challenges there, and yeah, we'll just see where things go.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be cool to relate like Brett's story and like the difference in rank and level of hockey to our listeners in like the CrossFit community.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a sport like hockey has very clear lines as to like how a pro would train compared to how a kid should train, and how like somebody who's just starting to play hockey compared to somebody who's played hockey their entire life. I think in CrossFit, everyone just tries to do all of the same thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it's just not the best approach. So I think we can loop it back.
It's not as specific.
Right, and it has to be because it's a sport, right? If you want to do CrossFit as a sport, it has to be.
Yeah.
You have to go through the proper progression. It's
Yeah.
like when you start hockey, your coaches have a set,
Right.
I don't know, list of like objectives that they want you to achieve in like tyke, and then novice, and then so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Like there's certain coaching things, systems, and all that Hockey Canada has set up that CrossFit doesn't have, which is where that sport definitely needs to catch up. But let's.
But that's where guys like you come in hand and come in handy and say, listen, buddy, you can't be doing that at this age, or you can't be doing that yet, or it's more of an example, but
let's hear your story. I think if people follow the London Knights that listen, they'll recognize your name. But kind of where did it all start for you, and where are you at now?
Yeah, I think obviously, everyone always says, I started skating when I was 5 years old, 3 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the same for me. Very hockey-based family growing up. My dad's dad was a huge Blackhawks fan. That's the team that I like too. So, we were obviously based around hockey. My older brother, Quinn, I'd always get his old equipment, and, I just love to skate. And then, you don't really, when you're playing, I've always played at a high level growing up. And to be honest, you don't really realize that your parents have to see it more than you, because you kind of just go out there and, put on your skates, your equipment, and go out and have fun.
Yeah.
But once you hit that age, I think 15, I think you're drafted at 16 years old. Grade 10, you start to, realize that, geez, maybe I can do something with this. You start to see guys a year or two older than you that you skate with, and, they go off in the OHL or NCAA, and, start to see, you start to see success from them, and you want that. That was big for me. I'd always look up to the London Knights, and, when I was drafted to the London Knights, that was obviously huge for me, but the biggest thing for my family in junior, for people that don't know, obviously you have to go off most of the time and get billeted by a family, but I was fortunate enough to stay at home with my family. And
was that that is huge. Was that just like luck, or?
If I'm being completely honest, it was kind of set up.
Yeah.
So like they obviously do interview process in maybe 2 months or throughout the whole season of your minor midget. But once it starts to crunch time with the draft for it, they kind of tell you listen, this is where you're probably going to get drafted around. Either we want you or we're going to think about taking you. And, they were very set on me, and I'm sure everyone before me. And, so I would say it was more planned, but you never know. You know what I mean? I one pick before I could have went to Sault Ste. Marie, or I could have went to Barrie. You know what I mean? You never really know, but I think it was more of a relief when I was selected to the Knights. And then I'll fast forward that, but 4 years there, I was lucky enough to win two times in the OHL, and not many kids can say that they've done that in any league really. So I was when you're going through it, you don't really realize. Sometimes I'll sit back when I'm older and I'm like, geez, I actually did that. I was able to go to 3 Memorial Cups, never won, but that was an experience in its own. And then I met Chett at Carleton University in Ottawa, very undercover university.
By then I was well on my way to hanging the skates up, I think.
Well, my favorite of you is every time I'd come in, you'd be in there an hour before stretching.
Yeah.
And then after practice, you'd be the last guy to leave an hour later.
So this is a good kind of like a connect
constantly
here.
Stretching.
Because we've talked about this several times on the show by now, I think. I've brought up a couple times about how I had like a back injury in my past, and I'm, on and on. I'm pretty convinced that it was because, probably in hindsight now, it was because I like worked out way too much that summer leading up to that season, and things just kind of clicked, and whatever, like herniated disc, blah blah blah. So it's funny now, like hearing your perspective of that and explaining that to people firsthand, because that's literally what it was. It's like, I just want to fucking play and get back on the ice. So what can I do? Well, I guess I'll stretch for an hour before.
I think you can look at it from both sides. Like, there's, so I obviously train with Jesse, and, there's times where I have to tell him, I'm like, listen, sometimes that's too much. Like, when you're a hockey player, you got to remember, like, your off season is more or less, kind of getting back to your peak, but you're never going to be like conditioning wise, strength wise. Like when you're playing in a season, like, how it is. It's a grind. It's, you're constantly playing games, practicing and stuff. But what's important is to find that moderation level in the summer and not overtrain, but also push yourself. And that's, I've been with you for what, 3 years?
Yeah, it's our third
year, and I feel like we've grown every year and kind of found, not that we didn't find it right away, but like, because obviously every year's been good, but like more or less it's been, you just keep growing, right? And
it definitely gets better every year.
Yeah,
because it's like an open communication system, right? Like you tell me how you're feeling. I mean, we sit down and talk about your plan at the beginning of the summer too. And then that changes, like it changed a little bit this summer already with some good stuff that you have going on now. That'll let you tell people later. But like, it's that's what it is all about in an off season for a hockey player or any sport. You're trying to get your body feeling good again, right? So if you're coming in and just beating the shit out of yourself 5-6 days a week, and you constantly feel like you're behind the 8 ball, then which I think a lot of programs do, because it's all about more and more and more. Like, you only have 2 months of an off season.
Quantity over quality, right?
That's right. Yeah, and that's where things get mixed up. So for us, it's like, how can you make your time like get you back to where you were before the season started? Because you're coming off a season, you're behind where you went into your season for sure.
Injuries, in terms of strength and conditioning, you don't work out for 3 months and stuff like that. But adding on that point, sorry, but that's where a good trainer comes in hand, right? Like if a trainer's constantly just trying to do quantity over quality, then it's like, okay, it might look good from an outside. I went in, I did bench, I did lunges, squats, and you just keep adding a list. Well, how do you feel the next day? How do you feel the day after that? Like, are you sacrificing that one day for the next 3 days? Or are you doing something smart today so that you're smart tomorrow and the day after and the following day and you feel good? So it's like, so maybe that was kind of what I'm getting to, but maybe that was the problem. I don't know. Because my first.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because really, we only have 4 weeks to focus on Brett's strength only before he gets back on the ice.
Yeah.
Right?
Problem.
And then everything changes.
Yeah, June. Come June. I mean, I get a nice vacation in Bahamas next week. I'm looking forward to. Nice. It's gonna be nice. But come June, it's gonna be another switch. Like I got probably maybe twice early June on the ice, and then. Some more like conditioning stuff, and then I only get 2 months, and then I'm off. So,
so we might as well get into that right now, then, so that people kind of wrap up like your full story, so people can at least see like where you came from, where you're going. So, like university, where were you this past season, and where are you going next season?
So this past season, I signed in Rockford in the American Hockey League, and I was there for, I think, just under 20 games, and the rest of the time was in the East Coast Hockey League with Indy Fuel. So 3 years at college, and I mean, I could honestly, that was probably the best 3 years of my life. Looking back at it, I actually kind of knew it during it. Like I was like, shit, like this is this is awesome. You know, it's more than hockey. You know, you're going to classes with buddies. You know, you're partying. You're away from home, and you know, you realize more than the game. And stuff like that. But obviously my whole point of going there was to have a good 3 years, get my degree, which I was lucky enough to do, and you know, do well and best I could, and stay with the process and try and get a pro deal. And I was lucky enough to actually get a couple games in the AHL too. That's my last season in Manitoba, and then get a deal in Rockford. But you know, it's tough. Like kudos to the guys that are in my position somewhat. Like if you're not in the NHL club's plan, and you know, they're not paying for you to, you know, be in their future, then it's very tough.
Yeah.
And you know, I feel like I had a couple times where, you know, I sat back and I just kind of was like, fuck, like, is this for me? Like it's a mental battle, and it's easy to kind of just, you know, it's easy to fold it in and whatnot. But yeah, I this year, actually 2 weeks ago, I just signed, or a week ago maybe, I just signed in Denmark over in the Metal League. I don't know if I say it. Something like that. They all have weird names over there. Yeah. But I felt personally it was the best fit for me going forward. I'm 25 now, and I mean, I can sit here and talk to you about what benefits I get. You know, like when I go over there and stuff, and how much.
Well, it's like you're getting paid to do what you love and see the world. That's a pretty sweet deal.
Well, to be honest, every time I talk to somebody about, you know, why I'm going over there, the last thing to say is like, oh yeah, and you know, the experience. And they're like, fuck, like that's good enough for me. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to Denmark at 25. I have very little expenses over there, and I'm going to be making more money than I would here. And yeah, and they give you a lot to succeed over there. And I'm lucky enough to be in a good spot with a Canadian coach and GM, and yeah, he loves his imports. So obviously I'm considered an import over there as a Canadian, and they got a brand new rink too, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool.
I think it holds like 7,000. It's something like that. So
get those crazy European crowds.
Man, I'll show you guys a video after. They're like,
I love that.
It's
dancing.
Like the arms get going. They look like those inflatable things outside of a store. You know what I mean? On a windy day.
Yeah. Wacky inflatable arm flailing tube, man.
Yeah.
Family
Guy.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It's your route's been one that like a lot of people wouldn't have stuck with it. So I mean, that's why you're finding success. That's what it comes down to. Is some people just make the decision whether or not they're going to grind it out or not. I mean, you covered all your bases, right? You did your junior hockey in London. You went to school. You got your degree. You got that. So I mean, you could have just been like, I'm just going to go do something with my degree, but you hung in there, and you knew what your worth was too. That's what we were talking about at the beginning of the summer. You're like, I know what my worth is, so I got to wait till I get the right offer. Right. It makes sense for me. Yeah. Because if you're going to be moving across the ocean, and being away from your family for an extended period of time, and I know that your family's really close, and it's like that has to be worth it for me. And seems like you found something.
I got some of the best advice actually from Marty Johnson, coach of Carleton for my first 2 years, or no, first year, or was he with me for 2?
He was probably there for your. Oh, maybe just the first one. Eh? Yeah. I don't know. I forget.
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank there, but sorry, Marty, if you hear this. But no, he's
not listening.
He doesn't give a fuck. He told me basically that I have to wake up the next day after I sign a deal, no matter where it is, and be satisfied with it and not look for something better. Yeah. So that's what I've been challenging myself every day. Is like, I'll be completely honest with you. I've gotten calls already after I've signed and before I've signed from other teams in Europe, from, you know, teams in the East Coast. And it's like, I got to just tell them, like, thanks for calling, but, you know, I'm sticking to this. And that's been the biggest thing
that's good
for me moving forward and trying to grow as a person and not looking for other things, looking for better. You know, you can relate to anything. You know, if you're going to buy a house and, you know, if something else pops up while you've already committed to it, it's like, fuck, like, You know what I mean? But, you got to stick with it and make it the best thing that you can do. And that's what I'm going to try and do in Europe. And you can make an unbelievable career over there. I mean, financially, it's very good. And again, the last thing I always say is experience. Like, you're going over there and, you're in Europe. Like, how many kids at that age go to Europe for, living for free and playing hockey? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's real cool.
We all know a guy who made a whole career out of that too, right? Trev.
Yep.
Made a whole career playing in Europe. How many years did he play there?
He was in the American League for a while, and then
10.
He was over there for a while, man. He played in the DEL in Germany, Austria, Finland, which is like those 3 leagues there are really good, and that's kind of what I want to end up in. This is more of a stepping stone league. It's a first division league. It's good. It's really good hockey, and a lot of NHL guys have actually played there as well. But those are the leagues that I'm trying to get into: the top German league, top Swiss league. You never know. Good year or two, maybe I'm there, and you see. But that's Trev wasn't always those top leagues. He's fucking a little feisty. He was a good player, man.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about? So, like, obviously, fitness podcast, we talk a lot about different volumes, different intensities and whatnot. Do you want to talk a little bit about the different volumes in, so say, the coast versus university versus even the A? So, like, what I mean by that is, one thing I think probably a lot of people don't realize is that the East Coast is 3 forward lines, right? Which is
with an extra guy, so you have 10 forwards.
Which is absolutely insane, like at a pro level, to be doing that night in, night out for, I don't know what it is, probably like 50
games.
Oh my god, yeah. So that is ridiculous.
That's a long season.
So like, even if you just look at like the training you're able to do off the ice playing in a league like that, it would be pretty damn minimal compared to the training you'd be able to do, say, in university at Carleton. Be cool to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, so I would say the best training that you can get off the ice would be a college NCAA route. Like, I know we play 28 games in school.
Yeah, it's not too many.
28, and then obviously you have playoff series that are only best 2 out of 3, which is nothing compared to 4 out of 7, right? And that's you really only play Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, maybe even. And so those Monday, usually we usually got like a Sunday off. Monday we'd come in, work hard, or have a hard skate, and then we'd have a hard workout. And then Tuesday was usually hard skate, no workout. Guys would do some stuff, but like very minimal. And then Wednesday again, you're back in the gym. And then Thursday it's more of like systems and flow. And then Friday, Saturday you're back at it. You're playing hockey. Or you're playing games. So you're able to get more. You're able to do more strength throughout the year, power, stuff like that. It's not that long of a season. The OHL is, I would say, it's more. You're doing more weights than you would in the coast because you're younger and that's like your way of developing. You know what I mean? Like if I'm 16 and I'm 120 pounds soaking wet, we got to find a way to get me to 140 even by the end of the year because you're losing weight throughout the year. So. Your weights are very important, even though you're playing 68 games in junior. It's, you're working out quite a bit and it's pretty demanding for a teenager. Once you get to like 29 or like 19, 20, 21, you start to get better with it. And then you're able to miss a couple workouts, but, and then, the coast, honestly, it's not that much. We were fortunate enough to have in our apartment, we had a gym and we would do a lot of the stuff there. So we try to get in 1 to 2 a week. But like you said, like 72 games, a lot of 3 and 3. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, back to back and traveling. Like we would be this is an example, we'd be at home on Friday night and after the game we'd get fed and you're expected to leave on the bus within an hour, usually a sleeper. So like people have bunks. But it's just like, fuck, it's a nightmare in there.
Crap sleep.
Oh, I one of my first times in a bunk, it was actually my first away game in the coast. And so in the back, I picture like a couch on one side, a couch on the other side, and then like a connector on the back. And the rookies. So this was my first year pro, so I was considered a rookie, and everyone put their IDs in a hat. And basically, I think we had like 7 rookies or something. You put your ID in a hat, and whoever drew first got to pick, because there was only 3 bunks available, and the other 3 had the couch, and then 1 had the floor. So, of course, every time, IDs get picked. Still no Brett. Comes down to the last guy and me, and I get the 6th pick, and I'm like, hey, I'll probably sleep on the couch. It's probably better than the floor. Well, I was a mistake, because I got so there's the couch on the sides, and then the couch that connects. I got the couch that connect, and oh man, it was to Kansas City. I think it was like 8 hours or something, and we left at 12 in the morning, so we got there at 8 in the morning. So it completed through the night. It was freezing cold. The window was open. It was going right through my thing. Ended up getting sick, but like I had feet. My head, I had feet by so like where my head was, there was a set of feet, and then where my feet were, there was a head. So I had to be careful with my feet not to hit the head. Right. And I wanted to be careful, like not to wake the other guy up with my head. So it was just an absolute shit show. But when we got there, it was I think it was an extra day. You normally get there, like on those road trips, you get an extra day. So we get there, practice, whatever, and then the next day we play. We end up getting waxed 8-2 for that whole trip, and then to go there for an extra day, play, and then we came back, and same thing. I couldn't sleep on the way home, and that was but shit like that adds up, right? Like,
oh god,
and then you're expected to come back to the rink the next day and perform. It's like, it's tough, man. And I know in Europe actually you never sleep, you never have hotels. Well, at least the league that I'm in, you're always back home, and like the furthest road trip's like 3.5 hours.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like, so something like that, and you go play there, and then you come home, and you're always back home in your bed. But the American League, sorry, I was rambling there, but the American League is technically the American League's a development league, and you have your NHL prospects and stuff, but for training wise, you're working out every day. Like when I say you're working out, like 25 minutes minimum, at least in Rockford. They have a really good staff there, and they're very nutrition based and supplement based, and education on that stuff. Like we got fed every morning, every lunch. We'd get like 2 chefs, unbelievable food, supplements like crazy. Every month we'd get something from CVS, like a huge bag of it. Like everything. I'm stuff I've never even heard of. You'd probably know Chett, but I was like, okay, whatever, I'll put it in me. And at least I would say a 20-minute workout. So if we played even the next day, we'd be expected to be in the gym. Obviously more at the beginning of the year, because you know how it is. Once you get to once you hit January, February, it's the dog days of the hockey year. Well, in life, and you've already played 50 games. You still have 26 left. It's you're like, shit. Like, do I really need to do like a lunge right now, or can I just do a stretch? So you start to like veer it more towards active recovery, stretching, and stuff like that. But like the stuff that they have there, like the cold tub, hot tub, salt you can put in the shower. There's one of those electric machines, so you sit in it with like half your body, and the electrodes come in. You can turn the nozzle, and your legs are just buzzing for like 10 minutes. They have the legs, the Normatec legs. They have like Normatec everything, like shoulders.
They have like full body suits for those things.
Full body suits. Full body suits. So like if you like the best thing about that stuff is like if you take advantage of it, you can be good, and if you stay on your nutrition, you can be good. But it's very demanding, because like especially when you're younger too, like you're working out every day, pretty much playing. In the AHL, you rarely get 3-3s, but like you're still playing 3 games a week. You play 76 games, so
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that would be the biggest difference between that development league that's pro, right, and then just trying to relate it back. We probably have a lot of listeners that play hockey and can resonate with that, but for those of you that can't, like, that's why not everyone should be doing what Matt Fraser's doing in CrossFit, right? Because Matt Fraser's a pro.
Yeah.
That's what he does. He has days like you when you're in Rockford, right? You wake up, you get fed.
Yeah.
You do your work, you get fed. Mm-hmm. You do your recovery, you eat, you go on the ice, you go to bed, you recover, and all those things are at your disposal because that's your job. You're a professional.
Right.
It's not a recreational thing for you guys. Like
Right.
you guys are pros, and that's what you do day in and day out.
Yeah.
That's how you get paid. That's that's it.
Well, that's my summer. Like after last year, the year before, even the summer before, I go, okay, this is I've always worked out in the summers and I've always trained, but like now it's like that's all I focus on, obviously. So a little different. It's kind of cool knowing that like, you're just strictly working out for your job in the summers. And obviously I do a little work on the side to make some spending money, but no, it's it.
We mentioned obviously there's some big differences in the way you train versus say like CrossFit athletes. So it'd be cool to hear that from Jesse's perspective, some of the major differences that go into the programming for those two different sports.
Yeah. I mean, CrossFit's hard to program for. It's the hardest sport. I think it just requires somebody to really understand that sport to program for it.
Well, because you're probably always trying to like almost have like a safeguard in place. Does that make sense? Like, don't let this person slip into like training and working out too much, right?
Yeah.
Or like breaking themselves down too much.
Yeah.
Or...
And there's so many different intricacies for CrossFit as a sport too. Like when you're programming for somebody who does CrossFit as a sport, they're exercise racing, right? So it's the actual movements that they're doing in the gym is what they're going to be doing in their competition. Yeah. So the translation, it's very direct.
Yeah,
right?
That's the best thing about CrossFit right there. You're literally working out to work out.
Yeah.
That's whereas, sorry for interrupting, but whereas hockey, it's the worst. Like I said at the beginning, no matter how hard you train, when you come to play a game, you will never be. Yeah, it'll help you out. It'll prepare you.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a game, like game speed, right? Like you're playing, especially like when you're playing like top minutes, it's so much like you can't relate to it. Yeah, even practices, man. Like you practice as hard as you want, but it's still nothing like a game.
It's funny how much conditioning you can do in the off season off the ice in terms of like sprints, ride a bike, whatever the hell you want to do. But it like obviously it translates a little bit, but I mean you're right. It never ever fully gets you ready for on the ice. Like you're still going to be just absolutely gassed the first few times when you're back on the ice.
Yeah. And anything that a hockey player does in the gym doesn't translate directly to their ice performance because they're on skates.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can even do those fast feet drills. You can do your explosive work, jumping, bounding, all that stuff. Does it make them a better athlete? Maybe. I don't know. Does it make them more powerful? Does it make them stronger? Does it make them faster? Yes. Right. And that's the goal of your off-season training or your training in the gym is to make the athlete more resilient and stronger.
When you say more, I would say at my age now, it's more maintaining.
Yeah.
Or getting back to my peak. Whereas like when I was younger, 16 to 20, it's like every year I needed to get stronger. Every year I needed to get bigger.
But even now, like you're only, how old are you?
25.
Yeah. Like you could totally still make gains in terms of like strength and power.
Like you could make massive stronger
ones
this off season without even making it a focus. It's just with the progressions, like it'll happen just as like a side effect of the training.
And I don't even notice it too. Eh?
Right. That's a good point, right? Yeah. Because I'm glad you can't notice it because that would be too far the other way.
Yeah, you don't want to be too mindful. The athlete doesn't want to be too mindful of it.
Yeah.
Like I'll do something, you'll be like unreal, and I'll be like, well, was that all right? And you'll be like, yeah, you just lifted like 10 more pounds than you did like yesterday. I was like, oh shit, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, just got to sneak it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that in itself is the major difference. Like for CrossFit, for example, like pull up as a skill for CrossFit, there's so many different things that might be holding an athlete back for that specific skill to make them faster at it, because that's what it comes down to. Like you can slice it however you want. It's whoever does the most work fastest wins CrossFit. That's pretty much it. It just everything, all the elements change. Whereas with hockey, and what I try to do with Brett is program and coach Brett as an individual first and as a hockey player second, because I'm not his hockey coach. I'm not going to make Brett better at hockey. I'm not going to increase his hockey sense. I'm not going to make him a faster skater, right? Like, my goal with Brett is to bring out as much potential in his body as possible and make sure that he's peaked and primed and ready for the sport that pays him, which is his professional sport, hockey, right? Like, the strength and conditioning stuff is just setting him up for that. Now, I have 2 hockey players. I'm going to train them the same? No, because they're not the same person and they don't need to get better at the same stuff, right? Like, for example, Brett's pulling strength for a hockey player is really high. Like, I think our max deadlift at the end of the last offseason was like 445 or something like that. Why does Brett need to deadlift more? He doesn't, right? Whereas there's other imbalances in his body that we are working on right now in terms of like single leg strength, coming off some injury stuff with his shoulders, so balancing that back up. Basically, the first 4 weeks is to rebuild what got broken in his season. The following 4 weeks is to maximize the potential that we have in that 4 weeks. And then after that, it shifts gears completely because now he's on the ice more, and that's the priority. He's getting ready. So we can't be doing high volume back squats and then expect him to go and skate hard after that. It doesn't do him any good, because then his skill and the sport that he needs to focus on suffers because he's doing too much in the gym. It's just not smart. But too many people fall into that, where it's like a generic program for hockey players, and it's a 16-week program, but your off season's only 8. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing? You're cutting off this progression halfway through. That isn't for you. There's the individual always has to come first when you're programming for anybody, and the sport is obviously right in there, right? Like, Brett doesn't need to do butterfly pull-ups, doesn't need to do muscle-ups. He doesn't need to do, I don't know,
pegboard or whatever.
Rope climbs. Like, that's dumb. Doesn't need to row anything more than for a warm-up just to get his body going, right? Like, I'm not going to put him on a rowing progression. But if you're too stuck in like one methodology of like programming and training for athletes, you just try to sprinkle that on top of everybody, and it doesn't work.
This is kind of a really random point, but I don't even know when or why I thought of this, but what do you think about something like weighted double unders for a hockey player, just for the wrist speed and endurance?
I mean, it's not going to translate to anything that they do on the ice, but nothing in the gym's going to. So is it a bad idea? No. What, is it necessary? Probably not.
I wouldn't say nothing. Like, I would say like stuff we did today, like the one-legged, like everything that we're doing now is slow, and it's like quick up. Well, that quick up, like that power, every time you see me, I'm trying to I'm almost over-exaggerating how quick I want to be up, right? Like when I said that one, like when we were doing bench press, it's like I almost need to come up here and the bar needs to shake because you're trying to explode, right? And that's
at the top,
There's certain exercises in the gym that kind of equate to it. Like when I do one leg out to the side with weight, like I'm holding a weight and it's one leg out, and skater lunges. Yeah, skater stride or stuff like that. One point I did want to add, and this is more for Jesse's listeners, but if you are an athlete, I would say be an athlete first. Like if you can go into a gym and lift however much and you're huge and you're that, you're just massive, you can bench this, you can squat that, but you're not athletic. And that's the biggest thing that I was taught at a young age, and I was fortunate enough for my parents to put me in multiple sports.
That's right. Yeah.
Being an athlete requires you to play multiple sports. Like you look at Odell Beckham, probably one of the most natural athletes in the world.
Yeah.
And he put an Instagram video up the other day of him hitting golf balls, and his swing was terrible. But it was one of the first times he's ever golfed, but he was crushing the ball and not straight every time, but you could see it just came natural for him. Golf's a little different because it's more technical, but when I go out when I'm in the summers, I'm last year I played basketball once a week, golf, I was in softball, tennis sometimes. If you're playing all those sports, you're going to have an advantage at your own sport, like in hockey, like tennis, side to side, lateral, basketball, conditioning, timing, like passing and receiving and vision, stuff like that. Like that's the biggest thing. Whereas like if I was only going in the gym and doing pull-ups and deadlifts, and like, where's my, my mental focus? What's it going to? A bar? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. I think that's a massive problem these days, is especially for hockey players, is kids throw their kid into hockey like 12 months of a year and just fucking grind them like day in, day out on the ice, like fall, winter. Oh, and then we're going to play spring hockey. Oh, then we're going to play summer hockey.
Yeah.
And these are kids that are like young, right? Like 8 to 14 years old. And like even Wayne Gretzky he didn't play hockey in the summer, right? So that's a really good point. Like, especially for young kids. I mean, because young kids are a bloody sponge. Like, why do you think me at the age of 25, if I wanted to learn a new language, it would probably take me like 3 to 6 months. Well, a kid that's 4 or 5 years old, they could learn 3 or 4 languages at once, no problem.
Yeah.
So like the same thing applies to the things you just mentioned, like foot speed, coordination, motor skills, like sense of like awareness in space among other players around them. Like all of those things are like, those are literally neural networks in your brain that you're refining and growing at that young age. Cause like I said, like you're a sponge at that age.
Yep.
That's where all neuroplasticity takes place. It's called, is just like forming these new networks, getting rid of those crap ones that are useless that you don't need. Like that's happening at that age. So like you said, if you want people to be a better hockey player, that was a really good point. You got to be or better.
It works
better
for any of your sports. I think hockey's the one sport where it's like, if you're playing if you're a football player, you're not going to get better athletic from like going on the ice.
Right.
I mean, you do see a transition with like, look at baseball and like that number 1 draft pick in the NFL. Right. He was drafted 8th or 9th overall in the MLB. You know what I mean? Like that's just like, there's also a difference between like specimens too and training. Like that guy, realistically, like he probably has a absolute motor on him. Like his lungs are probably, his lung capacity is probably nuts. Like that was, and the next thing I think where you wanted to get into was injury. But before I can say it later, but like one of the biggest things that's been hard for me is like, no matter how hard I train, there's guys that are going to be out there that have better lung capacity, longer legs, longer arms, stronger naturally. Whether it's hormonal or biological, or they just do things a couple times and they're fine. That's pretty like depleting as an athlete to see sometimes. But
everyone's kind of given like their spectrum of like peak athletic ability, basement athletic ability, and it's just up to you to get to like your individual peak. Because anyone who says genetics aren't a factor, that's BS.
Well, what you just said, individual peak, is kind of what I had to learn this year. Like I was seeing, for one of my concussions, I was seeing a neurologist, and she told me that, she goes, I'm going to be straight up with you, and you need to hear this, but you are not a Patrick Kane. Like, she would tell me like what his VO2 max was and why he can hang out on the ice for so long during a shift. Whereas, I go 35, 40 seconds hard and I'm gassed and I'm probably one of the better conditioned guys on the team. And I'm allowed to say that because I work my ass off in the summer, conditioning strength wise. But there's guys that are just like Mitch Marner. Like I played with him, like he has a motor because he's just, like I can skate forever.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes depleting to see as an athlete because you wish you had that, but it's you gotta make the best out of your own self. I guess it's cliche, but it's true.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We could probably talk about that in itself for like another 40 minutes, but since you brought up the concussion, I think it'd be good for us to talk about. Just like, I guess, quick overview of kind of your experience with them in, I think, the last season in particular.
Yeah. Well, first of all, shitty, obviously. I mean, I'm not the first, I'm not the last to ever have, a couple in a year, but it was, I mean, I'm fine with talking about it. I feel like, especially nowadays, like concussions are such a big thing, and it's good, but it's also it's tough to get a grasp on how severe it is. That was the biggest thing for me, is knowing like how serious it was. And the first one that I had, I was kind of like, I wasn't myself, but the biggest thing for me, and it's kind of funny, but like my first 48 hours, I was tired all the time, like just exhausted. And it was like I was feeding another body. Like I would be up at 3 a.m. till like 5, eating like cereal, like weird stuff. And that's when I realized, I'm like, okay, something's going on here. And that's when the neurologist said, yeah, your brain is like, it needs energy. It needs, because it's depleted, and you need to sleep for that first 48 hours. So I'm not a specialist or anything, but like going through it as an athlete, if anyone's ever had one, I think the most important time in that time span for like an average concussion, whatever, is the first 48 hours. Like, get rest. Don't try and force it. Get some support too. Like that was probably one of the hardest things, is like I had to ask my roommate, like, who's a couple years younger than me, to, I want to stay in bed for this next 9 hours and get some sleep and not be on a TV and stuff. Like, can you cook me a meal? Yeah. And it's like, I'll get you back later, but like you almost feel like you kind of like feel like you're being I don't know the word, diva a bit, but like it's your brain, man. And like, yeah. And athletes are so hardwired that you try to pretend like everything's okay. Like I would always rush back. I'd be like, okay, fuck, I just rested 48 hours. I feel better for a minute. I'm going to go in. And that was the first problem. The first one I had was that problem. I tried to come back a little too early, and I did some skates on my own and some hard skates. And that's when like I started to get more symptoms like dizziness and stuff. And the depression kind of kicks in. And when I say depression, I don't mean like, like there's real depression out there. And I feel for anyone that has it, like, loss of family members, PTSD, stuff like that. This is more of a depression, kind of thinking like, am I going to get back in the lineup? Am I going to lose my spot? What are people thinking of me? Am I going to miss out on team party on Saturday? Like little shit like that. Like, but it adds up, right? Like little stressors, you're allowed to be not okay. Mm-hmm. And, I would recommend, honestly, the biggest thing is rest and, making sure you're doing what's right for you. Don't try and rush back for something. Yeah, it's tough because as an athlete, if you're missing a week, it's like missing a year. Like you almost feel like you get unnoticed. And the second one I had, that's kind of what happened. Was I was like, hey, I'm gonna actually take more time to rest. I'm not gonna rush it back. Well, you're at your, the team's on a road trip and you're staying back, or our team went on a week road trip and I stayed back, and you're missing out on a week with your buddies, your teammates. And, like the important thing of like those kind of things of being around your team is building relationships. So it equates on the ice. And then, when you're away from the team, you come back in, you almost have that like anxious feeling of like, fuck, am I going to do well? Am I going to be, good as what I was before, and stuff like that. So that's the biggest thing in concussions with sports. You're, especially during the season, like you said, Jesse, it's tough to come back from. It's a little different than like a shoulder injury or a knee injury, because you definitely overthink. I'm not downgrading any of that stuff, like other injuries, because I've had it before and it's tough to come back. But yeah, head injuries are it's in its own.
Yeah. And if you're battling a shoulder injury, you can battle a shoulder injury. Yeah. You can't battle a head injury. Mm-hmm. You just can't do it.
And that's the problem, is people have that mindset. Like, well, that's why we got into this big problem that we're in right now with all these donated brains coming out as being positive for CTE and literally brain cell death and looking like the brain of an Alzheimer's patient, and on and on and on. It's just because people thought time and time again that athletes, that you can just battle through it like every other injury. But I wanted to, like, the depression thing is actually a good point. Well, it's an interesting point too, like from my side of things. like if you look at what's actually going on in the brain after concussion and then also in the brain from depression, it's like there's some literally exact same mechanisms. Like we know that with depressed people, this is not everyone, like every case of depression is different, but a lot of them are just as a result of too much inflammation in the brain. So this is from like what are called pro-inflammatory cytokines. So like usually you'd release these if you say like, you know, like bump your knee or have a cut or whatever. Like these are necessary because they promote that recovery, right?
Okay.
They promote healing. So the same thing happens in the brain, but you can have too much of these. So for depression, if you have too much of these, basically they'll go down what's called like this kynurenine pathway. This pathway, it'll lead to like increase in what are called neurotoxic metabolites. So basically this just means that this is going to promote like some brain cell death, some brain cell damage. It's going to lead to like another thing called quinolic acid. So these are all markers of, again, like neurotoxicity. So not good things. They're going to disrupt these other neurotransmitter systems. So this one in particular, like the one I mentioned, the kynurenine pathway, it disrupts serotonin signaling. So this is where the idea of the SSRIs came from.
Doesn't that hinder like logical thinking too?
Oh, absolutely. It messes up everything. Yeah. So yeah, like literally that's what this is where SSRIs came from, is because we're shunting, like these cytokines are shunting tryptophan, which is required for serotonin, down this pathway, down this neurotoxic pathway. These are increasing, causing all these problems. So then we tried giving SSRIs, which try to kind of optimize the serotonin that we actually do have hanging around.
What are SSRIs?
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
And that's like chemical, or
it's a drug, yeah. Okay. So it's a drug that just.
So that's like when you're diagnosed with like anxiety or depression, that's what you take.
Yeah, it's like one of the most common treatments. Okay. It doesn't. Most people, it doesn't work worth a shit, but it's kind of like the best thing that's around right now.
Yeah.
So why I bring that up is because post-concussion, well, that's an injury. That means that's going to stimulate an immune response. That means we're going to have increase in these pro-inflammatory cytokines, exact same ones I just mentioned. Well, the brain doesn't know if these cytokines are from depression or if it's from head trauma. So same thing happens. High levels of cytokines shunt this tryptophan down this kynurenine pathway, leads to increase in these neurotoxic markers. And then this could potentially, again, lead to some symptoms of depression. Mm-hmm. And then like another good example of that is sometimes they'll give cancer patients something called interferon gamma. So like this is another pro-inflammatory marker. They give it to these people to like basically turn on our immune system. Because if you have cancer, you want your immune cell on, running, get rid of those tumors, get rid of them. So they give them this interferon gamma to try and activate that immune system. Well, guess what? This increases inflammation. That gets into the brain. And then they find that the cancer patients where they give this treatment to, they have symptoms of depression.
Yeah.
And it's not so just true. Because people probably say like, oh, well, of course they have depression, they have cancer. But no, because if you give the interferon gamma and then administer a pharmacological agent that blocks the interferon gamma, those symptoms of depression go away.
But is that like, is it worth it? You know what I mean? Like, is it worth taking that hit for the better of
that's
like
kind of like
tumors?
That's kind of like a whole separate rabbit hole that I don't know enough about, because cancer is a complicated beast. But it's just interesting how you see all this overlap. Mm-hmm. And I mean, while we're on the topic, this is why shitty ass nutrition could lead to depression, because poor nutrition can lead to increased inflammation, and then inflammation in the brain it does the same thing.
I guess I can tell the listeners, like if they ever experience concussion or have, like the three biggest things is proper sleep. So like no oversleep, no less, like too much of, or too less of sleep. And I actually was lucky enough to have Chicago, when I had them last year, they were sending me supplements, the number one being like turmeric. Is that how you say it? Turmeric?
Yeah. Human.
There was some other stuff too. I think I sent you. Like there was
like a magnesium, a fish oil.
Fish oil. Those were my day-to-days, but they actually sent me specific things for a head injury.
Yeah.
They were actually, I had these things, these little, almost like those 5-hour energy things, those drinks. And in it was like turmeric, like all this stuff.
Yeah,
like
they're starting to pop up a little bit.
I forget what it's called, but I have
probably a glutathione in there.
So those two, and then this is one's kind of like off the record, but it kind of talks about what CBD.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'll be completely honest. Like when I was a couple nights, like I when I was drinking, I'd have some CBD before bed, and I woke up and it was like I didn't drink. And one of the reasons that I got hooked on it was Rob Schremp, and he was a hockey player, and he has a podcast. I won't speak too much on it, but he talked about his story. But he had some depression, and CBD was helping not only him but his father. I don't want to go too much into it, but like he was talking to me about his father, how it helped him and stuff with some other stuff, and I was like, I'll try it. I've heard of this guy having it, and I actually took it while I had a concussion, and I'm not just bullshitting. Like I would notice it, because like when you're concussed and you get headaches, it's like it's not your average headache. It's not your, I just woke up and I'm not feeling well, or like I'm headache. It's like the way I explain it, it's like a hot headache, like a hot migraine. Like your forehead starts to feel a little hot. It's like a burning sensation in your temples, and that's when it's like, okay, I've never had that in my life, even if I'm headache prone. And the CBD, it's not like you just take it and it goes away, but like if you take it at the right time, then you probably start to get less of that, and then it starts to get, I don't know, you probably know more, but it starts to react easier.
It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I know you've listened to this podcast, Jesse. There's a Dr. Mike Hart from London, Ontario that goes on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he talks a ton about THC too, but more so about CBD on the episode. And yeah, it's some pretty interesting stuff that is definitely popping up more and more and more.
Well, I think
mostly some research, but like more so anecdotal too, and with the legalization.
What I want to know is, why is it such a big thing now? Like, what's the government hiding it from us? Like earlier,
it does sound like a big conspiracy. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's that far off.
But there's something like that every year. It seems like last year. I'm trying to think of something, but like,
there hasn't been a lot of human trials with it though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of mice research showing that CBD like drastically improves, you name it, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, ALS, literally every neurodegenerative disease there is. But in terms of human trials, there's not much. So until they have that, they can't really. Yeah.
I know there was an example that I was told about, but with somebody with prostate. And they were taking it before bed, and they went from 13 times a night to 2 peeing.
Yeah.
And because it would have taken the swelling down.
Yeah.
And no, that's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm. What was the other thing I was going to mention? Oh, the sleep thing.
Yeah.
That's probably like the biggest myth going.
Yeah.
I did a talk last week for one of those like spring elite hockey teams. Like these kids are like Bantam midget going into their draft year, right. I guess. And I just kind of asked them at the start, like what they thought about that idea that if someone has a concussion, you should wake them up every few hours to see how they're doing. I mean, you kind of already answered it, but that's like the worst possible thing that you can do, because sleep is restorative, and that's the most important thing to recover from concussion.
Yeah.
Like you need to get into those stages of deep sleep, because that's when the brain is recovering the most. And if you're waking someone up, like whenever, however often people are waking them up, like they're not going to get into that deep sleep. And that's the worst thing you can do. The waking them up thing comes from, like hemorrhaging. Like if you have brain swelling, that's when you're supposed to wake people up.
Like that's more like
brain
contusions,
bleeding.
right?
Yeah. Like if someone has a brain bleed, you're probably going to know like immediately after the hit on the ice. So
yeah, well, I did a CAT scan. What's CAT scan for?
They'll do.
I did one. I forget what it was called, but I went through a scan just to see if it was a contusion or like. But I would have known. Like they basically do it as a precaution thing. Like you would have known. Like I have a buddy, and to this day I still get sick thinking about it. But like he had a contusion, and he like we knew right away, like he wasn't the same kind of thing. And but he was doing he was working over in Kamoka, doing language and just easy things like that to get back into it. But yeah, he was getting specific times he'd have to get woken up, and he wouldn't even remember some of the times he'd get woken up. But sleep. The other thing is too, Chett, I don't know if, but I was told obviously. So the one thing is you got to think your brain needs a nap, not your body. Your body's gonna be tired, but your brain needs a nap. It needs to rest. But the other bad thing is if I was to oversleep, sometimes it actually felt like it was making things worse. So after that 48-hour window, if I was to continue doing that amount of sleep, then it actually made things worse. So what I started to do was actually go out and started to do little things, maybe not after that 48, but a week after, I started to do a little more yoga and yoga. Sorry. It was one of those things that I was trying to do just as a mindfulness thing and kind of relax the body and a lot of easy poses like Shavasana, child's pose, maybe a 5-minute hold on my legs. I was trying to, that's the other thing too, as an athlete, you're always trying to better yourself in something. So while you're already injured, you may as well better yourself on something else. When I was concussed, and I mean, I'm more or less different. There's a lot of people that are the same, they're hardwired, they're same breed, but I was okay, while I'm hurt up there, I may as well get better somewhere else. So whether it be flexible, hand-eye, stick handling. So I would always be doing I would have 3 balls in my room and I would play juggling with my roommate. And he wouldn't mind. I would just be, or I'd be playing bouncing a ball off the wall, catching it, and quick reactions and stuff. If obviously I started to get tired of it and it felt like it was damaging me, then I would stop. But it was so I wasn't breaking a sweat. I wasn't breaking sweat, stick handling, not bouncing a ball off a wall, stretching, yoga, stuff like that. Whereas if I wasn't doing that stuff and I was oversleeping all the time and then I had to come back and expect to play hockey, I don't think I would be in the right spot. It'd actually make things way harder because all I'd want to do is sleep. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows how comfortable it is staying in your bed. It's very easy. Yeah. It's actually hard when you're concussed. It's hey, I got to go do something because you just want to stay in bed. And then that can equate to I find more overthinking. And
it's funny how the research is just kind of finally catching up to basically what you just explained. Sleep early on, a lot beneficial, but then after that, around the 48-hour mark, don't do absolutely nothing because that's probably the worst thing you can do. I don't know if I've mentioned this on here before, but there was a cool study at University of Toronto a year or two ago that they just took a bunch of athletes who had concussions, and one group, they kind of stuck to the traditional. I posted a couple times. They stuck to the traditional, do nothing, just rest until you feel better. And then the other group, they returned them to exercise pretty quickly. Not strenuous, right? Just easy aerobic
after what,
stuff.
24 hours, 48?
I'd have to double check the timeline, but they found basically what they found was that the longer they withheld exercise from people, the longer their recovery was. So the people that returned exercising earlier recovered faster.
But okay, so obviously, I'm trying to I'm going from experience. I would be that group that was rest for 48 and then exercise. But the thing is with concussions, how do you know that your brain's fine? You know what I mean? After 48 hours, I'm starting to do little things here and there. That's the biggest issue I find, right? Maybe that group that took longer to recover. We're talking longer to recover back in their sport.
Yeah,
but maybe they're better off in the long run. You know what I mean? That's the
if I knew the answer,
that's why it's so indefinite.
Absolutely loaded.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it.
Right. Yeah.
But we wouldn't have a podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're starting to look into some stuff like that. Even this study was at Western actually. They would just look at some different brain changes. They looked at, hundreds and hundreds of markers, but they took rugby players compared to rowers. So the idea being rugby, full contact, rowers, no contact at all. And they see these big differences, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but they see these big differences in the rugby players even in the ones who had never ever had a concussion, suggesting that maybe just from having like constant like physical contact, maybe the odd trauma to the head that's not technically a concussion, well, maybe that in itself leads to some changes. So the interesting thing there for me is that, you know, people always ask, well, why are concussions so much more common and, you know, talked about these days? There's the obvious ones about we know more about it, but what's going on now more than ever? Well, kids are playing hockey all year round. That's contact all year round, and not having that time in the off season to like just heal the brain and recover.
Well, that kind of goes to, you know, I'm not trying to slam the league or anything because I think it's a great league, but the East Coast, like you have 3 lines, you play 72 games, you have an extra forward, and you know, you're playing Friday, Saturday, Sundays. Like come Sunday, like if you're not mentally rested, you're getting shitty sleeps. You're out there, you're not going to be performing your best. You're going to be almost maybe like you're overtired. You're tired out there. You're taking some stuff before the game, and like once it stops, after it's done, kicked in, like you're in like a whole different planet, and you're just it's so much easier to get injured. And I think that's what happened with my first one. But actually, I mentioned 3 things: like finding that right amount of sleep, the CBD as an option, and what was the other one? I can't remember.
Like the other supplement or the other? No, like being active, using your brain,
like thinking, like trying to talk to, you know, having daily conversations, going for, I would say stay away from caffeine too, but like going to a coffee shop and having a conversation, reading a book for 10 minutes, like something small. But the other one big was for me, there's an app called Peak, and it's 4 games. I got it for free, but you can purchase it. 4 games a day. It takes like 3 minutes, and it's like specific for recovering concussions.
That's cool.
But you build your score. So like when you start, you're at 0. I'm at 600 now, and that's like, it's called your peak brain score. It's literally a game for the brain. So like one will be, so you have like 10 different things: language, memory, visualization. Just like there's 10 things in it, and each game is specific for that. And it's actually really cool. I'm not saying I did the perfect thing, because I'm sure there's more, but that you can do, or less that you can do. But that was one of the things that I actually enjoyed doing. To this day, I still do it, and I've got my mom, my girlfriend, some buddies on it even, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And stay away from the booze when you're.
That is literally the absolute worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
The bad thing though is that, and I mean, people who played junior hockey know this, like your buddy or maybe you yourself, like you get a concussion and then you go drinking afterwards and you're like, this is unreal, I'm loaded after 2 beers. And now I'm like, wow, like that's gonna that's just fucked. That's the worst thing you can do. It's hard to get the message across to people though. Like I mentioned that talk I did last week, that's a tough age to try and talk about something like this too. You do your best and hope that a couple kids listen, but
they're probably
14, 15 years old.
Yeah, they're right in that stage. They're right in the honey hole, like where they're starting to go to like parties and stuff like that. And some of them probably don't even realize too, like, whereas like when you're in like a professional sport, you have professional doctors. You have like, they're able to tell you, whereas like, you know, you're playing minor hockey, you have your parents and your trainer who works.
Just the maturity level, right? They want to play and they don't really care about anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's the hardwired aspect of athletes, right? That's I'm definitely guilty of that, trying to come back early and stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I really like the minimum effective dose. Like you got to do something right away. And I think that's with a lot of injuries. I mean, athletes, it's different because it's always like you got to pull the reins on them. Because a guy like you, like if you didn't have a professional team around you to help educate you as to what's going on, like I'm sure you would seek information, but there's so much information out there. Like how do you sift through it and find what's good for you while you're laying in bed feeling like your head's going to explode because you have a concussion, migraine, headache with your temples burning, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to have the state of mind to do that. So it's important to have the right team around you. But I think people do that with like all injuries. It's like, oh, well, they just identify as it.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to get away from that as quick as possible to help with just your overall well-being. It's like not saying things like, oh, I'm concussed, or like, you know, like the more you say those things, you just start to like get into that. And again, athletes are different, but like say, if like my aunt slips and falls on ice and hits her head, gets a concussion, she's not going to recover as fast as you because she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big part of it. Like you have to have that want to like play around with stuff, experiment with yourself, and then like consult professionals and make sure you're not doing any harm, of course, but like get away from a head injury. Like if you hurt your shoulder, like the one young hockey player, is like his off season now. So he's getting surgery on his shoulder. And the doctor's like, oh, I don't want you doing anything for 8 weeks. It's like, well, we're not going to do anything with that shoulder, but you got fucking 3 other limbs and your whole other body that works still, right? Like, and you're only in the sling for 3 weeks. Yeah. Right? So what does he want him to be stuck like this when the next season rolls around? He's going to be holding his hockey stick upside down. Yeah. He's not going to be able to move. Like, he's going into his draft year. Like, there's a lot on the line. Am I going to push him and, like, have him do bench press his first day back to the gym? No, but the guy's got to get in there and get the blood moving. Just for, like, moving the lymph, like, that's a big thing, too. Like, you got to move your body.
Fortunately, that seems to be a common recommendation is do nothing.
Yeah, and that makes it hard on me, too, because then, like, the parents come to me. It's like, oh, well, the doctor, who's, like, a doctor, and I understand, very, very educated. It's like, yeah, but they're not following up with this kid day in and day out. Like I'm going to be checking in with him and seeing stuff. He's like, I need to say the safest thing possible to make sure this kid doesn't jump in too soon and ruin the surgery that he just got and have to do it all over again, which I totally understand. But there's other things you could do and ride the bike, like little things, squatting.
There's
things
so
like
much,
that,
man.
So much.
Like I said, when I was concussed, I was doing, I was reaction things, juggling, stuff I still do. Like you see me all the time, like playing around with the ball, just kind of, and you come back, at least you have that hand-eye, because that's one of the big things too with concussions. That's just an example, but hand-eye is a big thing you lose. And then flexibility too. Your muscles, I feel like, I don't know why, but they contract almost.
It's the inflammation.
Yeah, right. So I was like,
body will seize up your joints.
Exactly. So I was like, hey, while I'm hurt, I may as well get better on this, get better on that, and try and get better on that, and where it's not like overexerting. But you say you get shoulder surgery. Well, there's no reason that you can build a team, find a trainer. So like example, like Doug Stacey, like he in London to this day, even when I have little injuries, I go to him so that while I'm working out with you and that I'm not. It's not like I'm just doing shoulder rehab, or I'm just working out. You're combining them. Mm-hmm. So if you can work out and do other things, but still do your rehab, it's like you're just you're preparing yourself for success in your next season, I guess, if it works out. But
yeah, gotta get back there as safe as possible. That doesn't always mean the longest way possible.
No,
doesn't have to take 2 years.
Well, I would definitely recommend, if this kid's in his draft year, I wouldn't see like a normal doctor. Like you got to see like what athletic trainer,
a few opinions.
You know what I mean? Like they're the ones that have actually had experience. Like this kid, I'm sure they've probably seen it 125 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's a shoulder separation.
Yeah, and they've seen what
hockey players get that
through history. They've seen what has worked and what hasn't worked. Right. Then they can dial it in for that kid specifically, and then off he goes. So
yeah,
cool. Got anything else?
I'm good.
Yeah, no, that was good.
Yeah, thanks for
having me. It's always
fun
to have that perspective, the athlete perspective.
Yeah,
because a lot of our conversations from like the coach's perspective. So I think a lot of people that listen are more in your shoes. Not at the level, like not professional athlete, not getting paid to play their sport, but like have aspirations of doing that. So it'll be cool to
and then
hear that from you.
I come into West London CrossFit and like, everyone's always like working hard, and they all have that same mindset as me. They're trying to get better at something. There's no like, there shouldn't be like a distinction between like an athlete and your regular Joe if they're in there working their best, and like what we talked about, doing your best individually that you can do, then that you're succeeding in your own, you should be happy with that. Obviously, everyone's always looking for more, for better, but if you're just doing your thing that you like at your best, like if you can look yourself, my dad always told me this, if you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, at the end of the week, or after a game, for example, and you know that you did your best, then that's like, there's been games where I'm scared to have my old man tell me the truth, but I know that I played like shit. I know that I looked bad out there, and I'll be scared to admit it to myself, but it's that shit helps, man. Like if you actually be like, hey, like I'm not gonna be perfect every day. I'm a fucking human.
Right.
Like if you're looking at yourself and be like, hey, like, you know, I just played my third game on a Sunday, 3-3. We're on the road. That's the moderation level. You don't want to go too far with excuses, because that's definitely a recipe for disaster. But you're also able as a human to be truthful with yourself, have others be truthful with you too. Like I tell you every year, like be honest with me. Like if I'm dogging it, or if I'm fucking up the exercise, like tell me, you know what I mean? Like I'd rather not do it on my page. Like that's why obviously a trainer is really good. And I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but just individually, just do the best you can in anything. And that's been my biggest motto lately. It's more of like a hippie style, but you know what I mean? Like I was always like, oh fuck, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Well, you gotta be truthful with yourself and be like, hey, well, I'm not going to be that. I'm not ever going to have that. Like sometimes I'll go into season, I'll be like, hey, like make sure you get 30 reps. It's like, I don't think I've ever had 30 goals in my life in a season. Why am I going to get 30 all of a sudden?
Do you have control over this goal?
Exactly. Right. Like, so yeah. Anyways, thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think we probably could have gone for another couple hours.
Could have turned into a Joe Rogan podcast.
Definitely. We could have had stories at Carleton for another
story
5 hours
for another episode, maybe.
Exactly.
Cool. I don't know. You want to dish out any info on where people can find you if they want to? Even if, like I say, a young athlete wants to know your opinion on some of the things you talked about, recovery from a concussion, whatever.
Yeah, no, honestly, I mean, I'm obviously not the first for it to happen, or I'm not the last, but I mean, I work out with Jesse 2-3 times a week, and I'm over with a sprint coach the other days a week. But other than that, I'm work a little here or there. So if you ever want to meet me, or Instagram message me. I can't remember what my Instagram is.
We'll post it on here.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's Welychka.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and either that, email either Jesse or Chett for my number, or email even. Cool. I like sharing the story because I think it's important for other kids to realize that when they're like not okay, that other people have gone through it and have got out of it and like constantly done it. I think that's important. When I was younger, I don't think like if I was to get hurt at like 16, I don't think I was, you're more like obnoxious. You're like, oh yeah, I'll just come back and be fine. And then you start to get older. You're like, okay, well now it's like getting more competitive, and that shit adds up as an athlete. So it's good to hear it from other people. And I've definitely learned from other people as well in that aspect. So again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Awesome.
All right.